Welcome to the second match that's been played in the 2022 CSL group stage. I'm recording this offline because I missed the games live, unfortunately. Some scheduling snafus. This will be the match between Johnny and Guitar in Group B. And I've got the two games up. I have seen the results, unfortunately, because I saw, and actually I think, I don't know, whatever. I've seen the results, but I haven't seen the games yet, so we'll take them through as if we were watching them live, and I'll be surprised at the ending. First game, we've got Johnny with the white pieces and Guitar with the black pieces. Guitar with the 52 chess name, because, you know, Roman numerals, LI chess. I'm not sure where the 2 comes from. Actually, shouldn't it be 51? I'm probably dumb. Okay, we've got the Roy Lopez, the Spanish game. One of the most popular openings ever in history. And so far, symmetrical, nothing fancy. Okay, we got an exchange and a capture. I think this is still just a normal way to play. Ooh, okay. I'm not sure. When I know the classical style is like the exchange variation. I think goes like this, and then you capture something. I think H or A6 is the most common move, but I think it's all normal and fine. Let's turn on the engine. Okay, so we see the first. This will be a little different because we've got the engine live, so it's going to be a little bit easier for me because I'm not going to do as much or say as much stupid shit because the computer's going to tell me. So it wants to slide the rook over here. Excuse me, threatening the knight. Knight drops back, and then black can recapture the pawn on e4. It looks like it wants to trade the knight first, but basically black is down a pawn here, but black will be able to recapture the e-pawn, and so it should be a very equal game. But instead, so black plays queen to d4, threatening the knight and the pawn, so it's a fork. Let's see. Oh, and white backs up there. The computer wants white to back up here because then the queen is being attacked, and the queen can't really take the pawn because it'll be recaptured. So the queen probably has to retreat somewhere. And then white will be able to play, it's like queen goes back here, and then this to support. So then in this situation, white's up a pawn. Not a huge thing at our level, but a thing nonetheless. But back to d3. d3, there's a common opening principle, which is you normally don't want to put your pieces in front of your pawns. So this one in particular looks really awkward because you're blocking the d-pawn, and if the d-pawn is blocked, then the bishop is blocked. So the bishop can get out this way, but it's like, you know, standard theory to be able to play d4 or d3 or whatever, and then get your bishop out on this diagonal. So I think that's why the computer is question marking. Okay, threatening the queen, supported by the knight, and the queen is pinning the f pawn. You'd normally like to be able to play f3 here, but you can't because the queen is pinning it. Very cool. Okay, and this is another sort of principled move. Put your rook on the same file as the opponent's queen, because if this pawn is kind of pinned, so if any kind of stuff happens with this pawn, the rook will be staring at the queen, which is good. Interesting. Okay, queen up, offering a queen trade. Declined. I think black could simplify here. Again, you could just take everything, and then it wants to play this fork, but you could also just take the pawn, and it's then you're going to get forked. So thanks, computer. That's why it wants you to move the bishop here. Threaten this, trade, and then I guess black is down a pawn here, but it's tough for white to convert this because the bishop is so passive. The knight's pretty good. Black's rooks are really good. But anyway, so black supports the queen rather than trade. White follows through with the trade. But unfortunately, so this drops the bishop because the pawn was defending the bishop. But this pawn is hitting this knight now. Very cool. Oh, not pushing rather than capturing. That surprises me. So it defends the e pawn, which is good, and it opens. Like normally, it's a good move. I'm just surprised. Yeah, it looks like this one is better, f3, because it defends the e pawn and also attacks the bishop at the same time. I should have done a rough draft to make sure this is actually recording. I haven't done this in a while. I'm sure it is, though. But now I can pretend I'm talking to no one, which is good. So this one, I guess this is possible. Very nice. And then trades. I think this is playable anytime. White's still up a pawn, but black has control of the only open file and a better bishop, so it doesn't look too bad for. Wow, nice, really nice, excellent move. There's not a lot to say when they both keep playing the best move. Wow, nice, very nice fork, hitting the rook and the pawn. Gobble, gobble. Ooh, okay. So the computer wants you to push this pawn because the best part of white's position is the d pawn being a passed pawn. So there's no black pawn standing in its way, so it can march to freedom and promote. So that's probably white's goal here. So this threatens the pawn right away, but there's no defenders of the rook, and also you put it on the same diagonal as the black bishop, so that's a bit sus. Okay. I think this is really sensible. It's not the best, but it's sensible, because this is capturing a pawn while attacking the rook, which looks like a really nice play, and I think it's fine. But the computer wants you to play b6 so that your pawns are strong. This rook can't go anywhere, and you're still threatening. Like, there's no way to move this rook that defends this pawn. So, like, the computer actually just wants you to go back, and then you take the pawn, and then you don't lose your b pawn. So a little bit different. It's like a move order or whatever. But sensible idea still. Nice. Okay, it's important a lot of times in the endgame to play a pawn move in front of your king, so there's no threat of back rank checkmate. Very nice. And then march to freedom. Trades. So this pawn is kind of scary now. I think it's easier to play white's position here. Oh, interesting. It really doesn't like... I think this move looks principled, but the computer hates it. I mean, it's... Huh. It's going to be hard to get your king off the back. So white has a rook on the 7th rank, which is excellent, because it exerts a lot of pressure on the pawns. And if you think about how to get your king off of the 8th rank when the rook is on the 7th, normally you need like some kind of... You're not going to do this, obviously, because you're going to lose your bishop, but like something like this. You need a shield so you can march your king forward. And I think part of the reason the computer hates this is that it's harder to get your king off. And the rook will be threatening g7. You could slide your bishop here, and then now it's impossible to protect g7. And if you push g7, Then there's the fork. It's going to be, and the king can't move. It's kind of miserable. But I don't understand why it wants this bishop move. I don't get it. But yeah, marching to freedom. This is a really important moment. Oh, okay. So that's going to be GG. Now with the queen. Check, 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 and up a full queen. There's this one. It's yeah, and black resigns. At this point, if black had a pawn that was close to promoting, maybe black could keep fighting, but the queen is just too much, so it makes sense. So the key moment here is bishop to c6. The reason being, so the rook is guarding the pawn promoting on d8, so white can't just push the pawn right away because it gets captured. And also, if white plays that same fork, now after the exchange, black's bishop is staring at the queen, so black can capture it. And this position, it should be a draw. Opposite colored bishops, all things else being equal, is usually a draw. That's why the computer evaluates it 0.0. But at our level, I think it's still... Black has an extra pawn, so I think black is certainly playing for a win, and white would be hoping for a draw. Could be interesting. But this, I think this is a... Bishop c6 is a relatively... It's not the easiest move to find. You got to read several moves in advance and calculate a lot of different things with these moves, and also with the bishop coming out and everything. So that's not the easiest one to find. Okay, so game one, Johnny with the white pieces gets first blood. But this was, I think this is an excellent game. I'm really impressed with the quality of this game, especially the midpoint. It looks like Johnny had the potential for an edge here, missed it by playing d3, and then black guitar kept the pressure on. This is really, this is great, picking up pawns. And then I think if black plays b6 here, like we talked about, then I think black's in the driver's seat for sure, because black's pieces, it's like black's pieces are super active. This pawn on c4 is not defendable. So black's going to get a passed c-pawn after this, so then nothing's standing in the way of black's c-pawn. It looks pretty good for black. Anyway, okay, so great first game. Let's take a look at the second game. Johnny's got a 1-0 lead. And this time, let me flip the board. I know it's actually, yeah. It's easy to find as long as you find it. Okay, so this time, guitar with the white pieces, Johnny with the black pieces. Let's see. And we've got the Caro-Kann. Very cool. All pawns and no hope, as Jojen Reed said in the Queen's Gambit. Usually, if white is allowed to play both d4 and e4, white should do it in the opening, because then white has strong central control, and the point of the Caro-Kann is to fight back here. This is like main line or whatever. This kind of thing. But generally the opening principle is like you want to have control of the central squares, so that's why like the most common moves are probably e5 and c5, both of which kind of prevent you, like if you play right away and then recapture with the queen, then it's like your queen gets chased and it's pretty easy for black to defend. But both e5 and c5 are trying to attack the d4 square so that white can't play d4 so easily. And with c6, the idea is to prepare playing d5 yourself to strike against the e-pawn. Anyway, let's keep going. I think, so this one is surprising because it blocks in your bishop, but at the same time, there's really nowhere for the bishop to go. Like all these squares are defended by black pawns, so maybe it's fine just to support the e-pawn. A sensible move, pinning the knight, and sensible developing move. This is the common Caro-Kann idea, like the, I think the, like kind of the basic theory is that you see you put all your pawns on white squares, or on the light squares, and if you imagine your bishop being back home, the bishop would be miserable, right? Because it's blocked in everywhere. Oops. And like, there's just nowhere that the bishop could be effective. So the point is, like, you get your bishop out early, so it's outside of your pawn chain, and then you put your pawns on the light squares. So your dark square bishop is really happy. It's got a lot of room to navigate, and you're probably going to trade your dark square bishop for a knight, or just, you know, you just don't care. It's like your least favorite piece in this opening, so you just kind of, you know, try to get some value out of it, and then concentrate on the light square thing with the pawns. Pretty cool idea. Pretty cool positional theory. Normal, normal, normal. Yeah, and we see, so black is happy to trade the light square bishop right away. If you can imagine this like backing up, but like, where's your bishop even gonna go? Even if white does this, which is normally not that principled to, like, you know, push the pawns where your king is gonna castle, this bishop is just, it doesn't do anything because all the pawns in the game are on the light squares. It just, it's so cramped. So that's why it's pretty common to exchange. And taking with the pawn, guitar takes with the pawn, which is surprising. It does open the g-file, which maybe you can slide your rook over and attack, but usually you want to take with the queen to preserve the structure. Usually doubling up your pawns like this, unless you've got a clear, like, imminent attacking idea, normally you want to keep a healthy pawn structure. Because now this H pawn is going to be very sad. It's hard to defend it because it doesn't have any friends nearby. Ooh. That's a shame. That's too bad. Gotta back up more. This one allows the pin. I think Johnny's probably gonna see that. Yep, okay. Or the fork. So now pawn's hitting both pieces. Oh, and capture. So this is more nuanced. But there's two things to look at, which are capture, capture here, and then you don't have a great square for your knight. So you actually need to back your knight up. And this knight is okay. I mean, it's hitting this. It's got squares it can go. It's okay. But yeah, this check is going to be crushing. Because after all this stuff... Oh wow, this is savage. Sacrifice the bishop. It wants to play this, so if you take the bishop, you get checkmated. That's pretty savage. So that's why white's supposed to make some space for the king, and then you can go in with this check. Ooh, this is painful. White's king is getting hunted. Anyway, but the main point I wanted to make is there's two things you need to look at when you're in this position as white. You're going to lose a piece, right? One of your pieces is going to die to the pawn. Fine. In the actual game, okay, so white brought the knight over here. This knight isn't going to have a lot of prospects. It actually can get kicked immediately, and there's like nothing you can do. So rather than that, you could consider dropping your bishop back here, and then after black takes the knight, I guess it wants to take with the pawn. I was thinking take with the bishop, and then I think having your bishop on c3 is a little bit more, and having the pawn on e5 as a target, it looks a little bit more manageable for white. You don't have this pawn on d4, which is super unpleasant. And having a bishop's usually a little bit better than having a knight. Especially just the quality of this knight is just miserable. There's just not a lot for it to do. Ooh, nice find. So there's another principle. Loose pieces tend to be on like the 4th and 5th ranks. Because if you look at the basic setup of chess, like everything on the 6th and 3rd ranks is all supported by pawns just innately. Most of the squares multiple times. And then most of the pawns are supported multiple times, right? Or at least they're all supported at least once. But nothing is hitting the 4th and 5th ranks. So if we skip back ahead, like this bishop here, not supported at all. And then this knight here, not supported at all, not protected. So when you see pieces on the 4th and 5th ranks, or yeah, 4th and 5th ranks, then often these kind of tactics will appear. This is something you should always look out for. So you've got check and also hitting the knight. Really cool defense. Playing c3 defends the knight simultaneously as blocking the check, which is very cool. And then this one, white recaptures with the pawn, but I think it's much better to take with the knight because now your knight is protected. And it's also, having a knight, there's a common saying, knights on the rim are grim, which knights on the edge of the board. If you're on the edge of the board, at most you can hit 4 squares, right? Whereas a knight in the center hits 8. Like on the second file, this one hits 6. So re-centralizing your knight, blocking the check, keeping your pawns together, all good things. Feeling the flow, feeling the flow. Okay, hit the knight, drop back, got a check. Oh, and then black trades queens here. Okay, I think... So black has like a lead here. Black is up a knight, and white's king is still in the center. Although black's development is not so good with the kingside pieces, but I can see why you'd want to keep your queen on the board rather than trade it. Because I think white is a lot less comfortable than black is. So usually if you're leading and you're like attacking, you want to keep your... It's fine to simplify though. There's nothing wrong with the simplification. Because if you're behind, you definitely want your queen on the board because you might be able to play some tricks. So maybe taking the queens off makes it simpler from the attacking stage so that there's less possibility that you're going to get bamboozled. Yeah, and Johnny is just trading pieces, so he's up. He's got 2 knights for the bishop. And check here. So Johnny's plan should be to castle, or maybe just move your king up at this point. Get your rooks involved and start pushing these pawns on the queen side. Towards the end game, you generally want to push your pawns where you have a majority. So white only has this 1 pawn. I guess the d pawn still helps, but like since black has a 3-2 majority for queenside pawns, black wants to like put your rooks behind your pawns, push them, get a promotion, win the game, easy. And if I'm white here, I'm thinking, okay, the c6 pawn is weak. It's not defended at all. So maybe that's something I could exploit. I really want to move my bishop somewhere and get this rook into the game. Maybe just slide the rook over at the very least so that it's eyeing the g7 pawn. That could be an idea. Castle looks pretty solid. Okay, eyeing the c6 pawn makes sense. Check. Oh, this is dastardly. So you can play en passant here. But then your king's in the center of the board. The other rook's you might get checkmated in the center of the board. In the endgame, you do want to bring your king to the center for it to help fight. But I think black has too many pieces at this point. And white's pieces are too far away to support the king. Dropping the king back here. Oh, black doesn't go for it. There's this fork. So this wins a knight for the rook, which would be, then black is basically just up a rook, which is even better. Black decides to play a5 instead, get the pawns rolling on the queen side. Makes sense. Probably not as optimal as the fork, but still not a bad move. And white gobbles up the pawn, and now we see the fork. Oh, that's... Look at this. So you can take the rook, but actually it's better, I guess, to play this check first and then take the rook. So now your knight is like in a central square and whatever. Okay. Black gobbles up the rook. And at this point, this game is looking pretty rough for white. This pawn, white does have two passed pawns in the center. I think if white were only down one piece, this would still be pretty dangerous. Like if white still had a rook or a knight or something, and so is only down basically one knight, I think the game is... It's definitely still better for black, obviously, because black has an extra piece. But I think these pawns are pretty dangerous. Black would have to be very careful. Being down two pieces, though, it's still... These are the best assets white has, but it's really tough to make them work. So we've got check. And then check. Okay, so offering a trade and accepting the trade. The pawns are dropping. It's tough for white to hold on to everything, being down two pieces. Yeah, and you can't trade your last rook, then it's over. Because black will just have two pieces, white will have none. There's no chance for tricks. Checkmate in 9. Do you see it? I don't. Who cares? Checkmate in 2 here. This is a better problem. You can see the king is completely boxed in. So this is almost checkmate. There's just the throwaway. Remember in Order of the Phoenix when Gandalf is fighting Voldemort, or dueling, and like Gandalf keeps... Anyway, Gandalf could summon a statue to absorb the lightsaber hit from Voldemort. And we got checkmate. So Johnny dispatches Guitar 2-0. But I think, you know, the score is 2-0, but I think it's you know, the trite saying, but I think it's true. I think the games were a lot closer than the score indicates. I'm pretty impressed. I know Johnny's been working really hard, playing a lot of games, so I think I'm not surprised that he won, but I feel like these are some of the best games I've seen from Guitar, including last year's tournament. This one was rough. He got off to a bad start. The first game was very good, and this one he kept it together pretty well. So, pretty impressive. I think Group B is really interesting. So we'll see what happens. I think anything could happen in this group. Johnny's probably the favorite, but I mean, WAP was the finalist last year, so WAP is certainly not going to go down without a fight. Sonic, anything can happen when Sonic's playing. He's definitely the wild card of the tournament. And then Guitar's look, you know, rough start, but I think really strong showing, so who knows. All right. That wraps up this match. Let's hope that we have other matches played ever, hopefully this week.